Hello everyone, welcome back to another and probably final Doctor Who Ramble. Today we are talking about Series 2, Season 2, Episode 8, the Reality War, the finale of Season 2, the finale of Doctor Who, at least for a little while, potentially. That's still all up in the air. We're still waiting for news about the future of the show. We're probably not going to be getting anything for a little while, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. So first things first, it is so hot in the UK right now, so if you can hear something in the background, I've got a fan going literally right there, and I need it, otherwise I just can't record anything because this room would just boil me alive. So hopefully the audio's not too bad. I've tried to record this maybe 3 times. I did really well on the second attempt. I got about 17 minutes in, and I just caught myself thinking, like, you know what, I don't care. I don't want to talk about this episode anymore, so I just stopped. But the completionist in me felt the need to do it. I know I said, like, if I really, really didn't like an episode, I just wouldn't make a video on it. But, you know, I feel like I just had to round out this kind of series of videos, so here we are. We'll see what happens. I mean, it's been, at this point, 3 weeks to the day since the episode aired, and I'm kind of glad I waited a little bit to try this again. To let, just calm myself down, let me sit on the episode a bit longer. I've kind of done more immediate reactions to all the other episodes. This one I feel like you really need to just digest, not only because it's so long, but because, Ncuti Gatwa is no longer the Doctor. Billie Piper potentially is the Doctor. Fuck knows if the show is ever coming back. Here we are, Reality War by Rusty Davies. Basically everything I was nervous about after Wishworld, with that, I was like, there's just no way it's going to juggle all of this and pay this all off in a satisfying way. All of those fears kind of came true with this episode. I'm not sure I've ever felt so deflated and beaten down after an episode's aired. Believe me, I've liked episodes less than this one, but this was so messy, and I think it's even worse. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of last year's finale. But I was a bit like, on that entire series anyway. With this series, because I think Season 2 has been so strong, I think it made this all the worse that I just did not gel with this one at all. And I know I'm not alone in that opinion. It seems to be the general consensus is that this episode's a hot mess. And I think that's putting it quite kindly. I did not have many kind words for this episode when it first aired. I'm not sure I have that many kind words for it now. So, if you're a big fan of this episode, if you're a big fan of this era in general, I would say don't bother watching this, because, you'd only be making yourself angry, and there's enough of that online as it is. I'm more frustrated, I think, with this episode than anything else 3 weeks on from it airing, just because this era could and should have been so much better. They were working on this for 2 years. They had 2 years to really refine all these scripts and get the behind the scenes stuff sorted out. And this is what we got. Like, ugh. Like, you worked on Space Babies for 2 years and you still thought to broadcast it? Okay. So, yeah, I wasn't a particular, fan of this, how it all wrapped up. The fact that the main threat that not only has this entire season's been building to, in regards to Mrs. Flood, we've been building up to this moment and this story for, like, the best part of 2 years, since we first teased, like, who is this Mrs. Flood lady in the church on Ruby Road. And, it was very clear Russell didn't intend for her to be the Rani until Season 2, when she just suddenly stopped breaking the fourth wall after the Robot Revolution. I think that's when he kind of decided, oh yeah, it's the Rani, let's just go with that. So to build up to that, and for literally halfway through the episode, one of the Ranis gets eaten and the other one's just like, well, see ya. Potentially never to be seen again. It's like, you spent 2 years building up to that? Like, okay. And, Omega is, people called me out for my pronunciation of Omega in the last episode, but if you watch the original serials, they all pronounce it differently, so, just say it however you want. But yeah, bringing Omega back into it, and he's literally in it for 3 minutes and then gets defeated by a giant ass gun. And we had to change the design of the Sonic to look like a Sky TV remote because they didn't like the idea of the Doctor having something look like a gun. And then you literally just give him a big ass fucking gun in the finale to kill Omega with. Make it make sense. You use the Rani as a means to bring back Omega, and then you use Omega to immediately get rid of the Rani. It's like they cancel each other out and you did nothing with either of them. And Omega is just completely unrecognisable, very bizarre. I'm so sad for Archie Panjabi, who I thought was brilliant as the Rani, and I was really excited to see her get more to shine with this episode, and we just didn't. I liked the two Ranis joke when Mrs. Flood vanished into the abyss, never to be seen again, I expect. But it's not worth it for just a joke about the two Ranis. So yeah, frustrating that was the choice. And, that side of things wasn't even affected by the reshoots and all the behind-the-scenes stuff with having to rewrite, like, the last bit of this episode. Well, I don't think they rewrote it necessarily. They rewrote, like, the very, very end, because we know the alternate ending exists, but they just have a big party, and then Susan appears at the end. All of that, I think, still would have just happened, and then it's just that last scene that then got changed, and I think they just added 20 minutes to this episode, which is everything, about saving Poppy and the regeneration and everything, which was done in reshoots in February. So, yeah, it's not even like, what they did with the Rani and Omega would have been any different. It still would have been rubbish. That's kind of baffling. You can kind of forgive some of the messiness because, they didn't foresee Ncuti's decision to leave. In a way, I think they probably should have prepared for that. Because, the Disney Plus deal and only having 2 seasons guaranteed with that, it is a huge gamble that they took and a huge risk. And they have had 2 years to try and sort something out and kind of get a decision either way so they can plan properly, and they just didn't. There's a fault of multiple parties, I think, there. That Doctor Who's future is now up in the air, and we have been forced now to only have Ncuti for 2 seasons, when he said on Graham Norton last year that he was planning on shooting a 3rd series this year. Clearly, he had to just, for the best thing for his career was to just tap out, because you can't just expect him to wait around until Doctor Who films again, because it might not. So I don't blame him for leaving, as sad as it is, but I think this episode, this story arc, this entire era with the 15th Doctor has just screamed of wasted potential. Nothing says that more than the way the Rani was used in this, the way Omega was used. Ncuti's, in my opinion, premature departure from the show. The way Belinda's story gets wrapped up, the way Ruby just kind of disappears from the episode, doesn't get a proper goodbye scene with 15, and apparently Millie Gibson has also just left the show now, so that's the last we've seen of Ruby, and she didn't even get a proper goodbye. I feel like 15 got more of a goodbye with Carla and Sherry than he did with Ruby, which is bizarre. So yeah, I feel like it was all just a waste. Even all the other side characters, what did they do? Why is that unit family so big? I don't care about any of them, I'm sorry. Colonel Ibrahim is just such a nothing character. I love Kate, obviously. I like Shirley, but I feel like they just don't give her anything to do. Why the hell was Rose in this episode? The idea of Conrad could not imagine you, and that's why you would disappear completely. I kind of like that concept, but it's also you've just sidelined your, that trans character still. The whole Conrad thing also just got so messy. I can't believe Conrad got a better ending than, a happier ending than any of the characters in this episode. Crazy. But, Susan Twist, okay, Mel was here for some reason, and she did the thing where her hair just dramatically changes so that Rani can recognise her, and the way she just bursts into Unit Tower on her moped thing, and she had to just wait in the lift with that moped so she could do this dramatic thing, so that just was very bizarre. If it screamed of Journey's End when you're bringing all these characters into it and they just stand there to potentially have a line or two if they're lucky every now and again. So it was just overcrowded. There was too many elements thrown in to the point where the main storyline gets resolved half an hour in, and then we focus on Poppy and saving Poppy for the second half of the episode. Does anyone care that much about Poppy? I don't think so. I felt like they didn't do enough to kind of build that up. The way Belinda's story ended is quite possibly this episode's biggest sin. The way the Belinda we first met at the start of the season, the Belinda we all kind of loved, doesn't exist anymore, and that's messed up. And she's just reduced to, you know, her character is just, oh, you know, I'm a mother, I'm being a mother, and that is wild to me. We had no inclination or even a scene kind of hinting towards that as like an appropriate ending for Belinda at the start of the season. So for her life to completely change around, and that's just supposed to be like, oh yeah, we're fine with that. You know, the Doctor isn't bothered by that. He's like, yes, this is the right thing. Weird. And, you know, we had the whole thing at the start of the season where Belinda calls the Doctor out for scanning her DNA without her consent, and then he scans Poppy's DNA without her consent in front of Belinda in this finale, so he's learned absolutely nothing, and Belinda doesn't take issue with that here. So Belinda is a completely different character in this final two-parter, and just completely ruined her character for me. Her ending's just so awful, and it's such an awful shame because I think Virada Sethu's been a shining star this season, and I really loved the Doctor and Belinda's dynamic throughout this season. So for it to come to this and end like this, with Belinda's life completely changed or rewritten, and that's supposed to be fine and happy and good. Bizarre. So yeah, I really wasn't a fan of how that all turned out. And you know, there's some spectacle there with like the battle with the Bone Beasts, which is a very interesting name. But again, I'm just like, I'm not getting anything from that, because I'm like, why would the Bone Beasts even need to be here? There was no reason for them other than then be like, let's spend money on them and let's have a big fight with them. But I feel like there's no investment in that, there's no stakes in it, because I don't really care about the Unit family. I think the way Unit has been portrayed in this era just hasn't been my favourite. I think we get too much of them, to be frank. You know, having the Giggle set in that Unit tower, having the last finale be set in the Unit tower a lot, and again here, I'm just kind of bored of that now, and like, why is the Vlinks a thing? I don't care. So yeah, just like, I'm desperate for like, it needs to be changed up, but you just keep falling into these same habits of over-relying on past elements of the show that casual viewers aren't really going to know. So you're not appealing to them. So the people that would maybe get something out of this are, you know, die-hard Doctor Who fans who will know who the Rani is, who will know who Omega is. So for you to then treat them the way you treat them, that's also going to put off the Doctor Who fans. So what was this who was this episode for? Who got something from this? Who really gained 100% of what they wanted out of this? You know, what is this era for? Who is it for? So there's just too much self-referential stuff and fourth wall breaking that's just not explained. And I know Russell kind of said like, well, it's just what happens now. It's just what characters do. He said that, you know, like way back when. But I'm like, I'm sorry, that's lazy. And you know, you've been kind of explaining away all these plot threads and stuff in things like Doctor Who Unleashed, or on the Doctor Who podcast last season, or in Doctor Who magazine interviews. If you have to explain why this certain aspect of an episode works in like a spin-off show or a spin-off bit of media, something's gone horribly wrong with the script. You should be able to understand everything in the episode presented to you, and we do have to judge the episode presented to us. So baffling. It is baffling that it's gone this way, with all the preparation that they would have had for this era, and you know, all the hype surrounding Russell's return. Yeah, it's just, you know, I have nothing against anyone who works on the show personally, Professionally, I have some qualms. I think Doctor Who needs just a new lease of life, whether that's to rest for a couple of years, or whether that's to get a completely new team of people in who aren't just trying to make it the way they made it in 2005 to 2010, because that Doctor Who just doesn't work anymore, and I just don't think the stories have been up to par. Certainly not the resolutions. So, I get invested for a year and a half. I get invested for a year about, who's Ruby's mother and stuff, and we get that god awful, like, oh, she was naming you, pointing at the road sign nonsense, and your big idea is, I like the sentiment of Ruby's mum being like sort of a nobody, but like your whole thing is like anyone can be nobody. That's your big like haha. And I'm like, well, yeah, obviously. Like, thanks for that insight, Doctor Who. I never would have thought of that. Anyone can be a nobody. So that doesn't really work from that angle, and yeah, I had so many issues with that. But that kind of showed me not to get invested in Mrs. Flood's storyline. So I wasn't really. Then you revealed that she was the Rani, which a lot of people kind of assumed. And then we got Wish World, and I was like, okay, I'm on board with Archie Panjabi as the Rani. I'm kind of invested in this character and what she's doing with it. And then you get this episode where she just gets eaten. And I'm like, okay. So once again, I've learned not to get invested in any of these story arcs, because that's a year and a half of building up this character wasted down the drain. So that's kind of a shame. So when they teased the boss in this episode, I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care who the boss is, because whatever you do with it, based on all your other major story arcs so far, I'm going to be disappointed, because it's going to be So I'm just frustrated, and I just feel nothing about Doctor Who at the moment, which is so sad, because it's like my favourite show. And some people love this era and got a lot out of it, which is great. I don't enjoy not enjoying Doctor Who, and this era just really hasn't been for me, sort of. But I guess it's kind of 50-50, because up until this episode, I really was enjoying this series. I thought it was a huge improvement, and I think that's what really stings, because you go back, and because there's so much like talk about the Vindicator and getting Belinda home to her parents in like every single episode this season, you can't just go back and watch those earlier episodes and be like, at least these early episodes are really good, because it's just constant reminders of like, oh, this is not going to go well, this is not going to go to a place where I like. So that's just frustrating, and it's all just, so much wasted potential, and I'm just so sad. And I'm sad for Ncuti, I think, most of all, because he did deserve a lot better than I think he got. To be kind of overshadowed in his first appearance with the whole bi-generation thing. So instead of focusing on the new Doctor, there's going to be fans being like, but David Tennant can come back any time. We don't need this other guy. And for them his era to then be bookended with Billy Piper, him regenerating into Billy Piper. I'm like, that's too nostalgia baits, clickbait, kind of Doctors bookending Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor. Like, you've overshadowed him when he first came in, you've overshadowed him when he's left, with these kind of fan casts, really. It's just these two stunt castings. And I just don't think that's good enough. Doctor Who should not put characters and eras of the show on pedestals, because the fans do that enough as it is. When the show starts doing it itself and being like, isn't this the best? Aren't we just the best? Do you remember this? That was the best. Something production-wise is going horribly wrong, and that's just not a vision and a direction for a show that I personally want to support. So, who knows when or if Doctor Who's coming back. But, yeah. I'm just blue. This is me now. This is me 3 weeks later. Imagine how I was in my earlier attempts to record this. I was seething. I've just remembered I didn't put the image up. There you go. Whew, okay. Breathe before I pass out. So yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this episode. Positives, I loved the scene with the Doctor and Belinda going back and forth, and Poppy's cope's getting smaller and smaller, and then eventually it disappears to kind of show that she vanishes. That was a lovely scene, and Millie Gibson's performance in that scene was really good, like Ruby's reaction to that. And again, but it's just with one thing, it always reminds me of something else, because it's like when Ruby's like, oh, why did I remember that other world? Like, why did I remember that things were wrong in Conrad's Wish World? And the explanation we get is, I don't know. Cool. Great. You can say what you want about like 73 yards or something coming into it, but like, explain it like that then. Like, mention it, don't just say, I don't know. Like, okay, I'm so glad I'm invested in this. But yeah, that scene was nice. I liked the idea and execution of a doctor giving his life for one person. I just think the execution of it in this episode was just so rushed. Can't necessarily blame anyone for that in this circumstance, but at the end of the day, professional writers should probably be able to still write good things, in my opinion, even if it has to be like a rewrite, because you still then had another new 20 minutes to work with, and for it to just be quite messy is a shame. So yeah, that wasn't ideal. The cast were great throughout, I thought, just mostly wasted. And what else did I enjoy? There must be something. Best scene of the episode is obviously when Jodie Whittaker came back as the 13th Doctor. I loved that moment. Again, if they'd had that scene and then Ncuti immediately regenerates, I'd have been like, oh, don't overshadow him with other Doctors again as he's leaving. They still kind of did that ultimately with Billy anyway. But, luckily there was still a decent gap from that scene to the regeneration, so that was fine. I thought the callbacks of like him regenerating in front of Joy, the star, I thought that was quite sweet in a way. I did enjoy Anita coming back. I think that was one of the best segments of Joy to the World, was the Dr. Anita's friendship. But of course, Russell had to make it about a romance and she was in love with him, which I never remotely got in Joy to the World. Like, you spent a year with him and you thought you had a chance with him? Okay, Anita. And as soon as she's like, well, I can't be with him, I'll immediately get pregnant by this other guy. Very bizarre. I don't know. It felt like maybe they just had to. Maybe the actress was pregnant and they had to write that in, but I don't know. Either way, it was great to see Anita back. Even if she, again, as soon as she was back, she was just there to stand in the background. But yeah, that is a resolution to the cliffhanger of her just appearing and opening the door to the Time Hotel and saving him that way. I actually really liked that as a solution. I thought that was fun. So the episode started off on a very strong foot with that. But I think maybe 15-20 minutes in is when it started to collapse. So yeah, it was great to see her. Like I said, I loved the scene with 13 coming back. It was like Jodie had never been away. She just stepped right back into that part, just with ease. I loved her kind of really supporting 15 with this decision. Him telling her that he loved her, that was just really lovely. And I think the chemistry between Jodie and Ncuti was really strong, and I really liked them and their back and forth. That was easily the highlight of the episode. I think, what did she say? Don't go in fear, go with that lovely smile. Beautiful line, a very 13 line. So there were moments of good writing, and that's a really lovely moment in this story, but just nowhere near enough to justify it. Again, Conrad had barely anything to do. I like that Ruby was the one to kind of confront him, but even then, just wishing a better life for him. I understand that from a certain point of view. It's kind of taking the high road, I guess. But more so I wanted that bastard to suffer. I wanted that bastard to get his comeuppance, and I feel like he got a happier ending than anyone else, and I feel like that just doesn't feel right. He got that life for himself, and then you do what you did to Belinda. I'm just like, come on. So yeah, there was all of that. I did write notes that I had in when I originally did a couple of tries at recording this, but I can't remember where I put them, so I really am just rambling now. So if I have forgotten anything that pissed me off or anything I've enjoyed, I probably have, just forgotten some things. But yeah, I thought, Ncuti was great in this, as always. So it's just such a shame. But, going back to the start of the series, why was Why was he chasing after Belinda? Why did he like actively try and track her down? We never know. We never found that out. Why, if you know in this finale Susan isn't going to show up, even though that was the original ending, why keep her cameos in the Interstellar Song Contest and Wishworld? Just cut them out, because you're just promising something you're not going to deliver on. And even if you do deliver on it now, the Doctor that you settled that up with is gone, so you're not going to necessarily feel as much of it. And the same with like Rogue. I guess Rogue's just going to be in that hell dimension forever. It made no sense how he could do what he did in the last episode anyway, but still, you know, I guess that's just that, because doing a return for him with any other Doctor just isn't going to have any impact. So yeah, it's just a big mess, and I'm sad, very deflated with how things turned out. You know, not necessarily any one person's fault, but you do have to look at how things are being run and how, you know, storylines are being shaped. So yeah, it's just, I don't know, I just felt very defeated by the show after this episode aired, and that's not a good feeling. I think I'd rather an episode just be like, oh, that sucked, rather than whatever this made me feel. It is sad that Ncuti never really got a solid finale. And I think a third season with him would have been really great. And I feel like his Doctor was only just getting started. I feel like they didn't really know what they wanted to say with his character in season 1. He was just sort of there. And it feels like they were kind of starting to get into that this season, and now it almost feels like it doesn't matter because Ncuti's gone. So yeah, just a huge shame to have seen this era kind of turn out the way it has thus far. And you know, whatever happens in future, you know, we're going to have a bit of a gap at least. You know, we are getting the War Between the Land and the Sea this year. At some point, I think the streets are saying maybe November sort of time. So that'll be interesting, I guess. But again, I care so little about the unit family in this era. I'm not like desperate for it, and I'm saying that's a huge fan of the Sea Devils. So I guess we'll see. And yeah, we have Billie Piper as the Doctor, as the Moment, as Bad Wolf, as Rose. Don't know, don't really care, because this just screams of desperation. I think Billie Piper would make an amazing Doctor if she hadn't had such a significant role as Rose already. I just don't buy into that. It's just like, oh, come on. You just did the gimmick with bringing David Tennant back. You can't do it again so soon. It just means nothing. And they've even said they don't even know at this point what's going on with her. So like, why should we be invested when you don't even have a plan for what you're going to do with this, if you get a chance to do something with this? Bizarre. So yeah, nothing against Billie. I think she came back because the show kind of just needed a hero in its darkest hour, and she kind of like, screw it. So yeah, why are we doing this again? Like, we literally have a character in this same episode called Rose because of the impact of Billie Piper's original character. So to have a character like that and the impact of Rose still around, and then to have Billie Piper pop up at the end, it's like, you know, move on, Russell. Please, dear God, move on. That is basically what I've been screaming at the TV for the past 2 years that I've been watching Doctor Who. You know, it's just been a bit too self-congratulatory for my taste, and a bit too smug at times. I think season 2 was a lot better for that than season 1, but still a mess. And I really don't care what they're going to do with it, honestly, because they have not, in my opinion, earned the right of my investment, because anything I have got invested in has let me down. So maybe we'll get more with Billie, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll you know, they'll re-release this episode in years gone by and they'll just fade to black, or like fade away from a generation and we don't see it because the show never returns. I don't know, but odd time to be a Doctor Who fan right now. Kind of a sad time. And again, I'm sure there are some people out there who really love this episode. And if you did, let me know. But yeah, this finale was not for me. I did not have fun. And it's not fun watching an episode of Doctor Who that isn't fun for me, especially when that episode of Doctor Who was then 70 minutes. Let me know your thoughts on the reality war. What did you like? What didn't you like? Are you intrigued about the future? Are you kind of just indifferent to it like I am now? Do you feel nothing the way I do? Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But either way, thank you for sticking by these rambles for the past couple of months. I have enjoyed doing them, I swear. And I hope you've enjoyed watching them. And what's been your favourite episode this season? What was your favourite story? What was your favourite character? What was your favourite moment? Do let me know. Sad to leave this season on a bit of a bum note when I've ended up really liking it up until this finale. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. But yeah, sad to lose Shooty, but he as himself, I think, gave a lot to the part, and I am just sad that all that potential, I think, was wasted, and not just with him, but with many things. So yeah, that is going to be everything. Thanks for watching. I guess I'll see you when I see you. I do have a few ideas. I'm kind of potentially thinking of doing some rankings. So I want to rank all of 15's outfits, for example. And I thought I could go through each Doctor and rank their stories from my favourite to least favourite, if that's something you're interested in. Maybe. I'm just kind of spitballing. I don't know if I'll actually, get that far and actually do anything like that, but we'll see. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to discuss a bit further about the show. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting these rambles, and I'll see you when I see you.